Everyone feeling really victimized now? Oh yeah, life is just really looking up. Gosh. How? Now we're going to tell each other the same stories a second time, but a little bit differently. What I want you to do is think of, we're going to take the position of being an owner, and there are 3 different ways you can do it. I want you to think of something that you didn't do in that situation that you could have done that would have made a difference and that would have changed the outcome. Or, I want you to think of something that you did do that you could have not done. You know, if only I hadn't given that car to the person, the thing wouldn't have happened. Or 3, how could you have interpreted something that happened differently that would have led to a different outcome? Wow, if I had only realized that when he said I hate you, he meant I love you, then I would be living a very different life right now. Yeah, no one's ever had that experience before. I'm not going to overshare. All right. So I want you to think again of one of those 3 things. Something you did do but could have not done. Something you didn't do but could have done. Or an interpretation you could have done differently. And which would have made the situation turn out differently. Then I want you to tell the story to the other person. But this time, tell them the story as this is what I could have done, and here's how I'll bet it would have worked out. And I'll give you about somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 minutes. So this time you're telling the story, but you're telling in terms of what I did do, or in fact you can even just do all 3. Here's what I could have done but didn't. Here's what I didn't do but could have, and here are the interpretations that could have gone differently. And ready, go. How did this experience differ from the last one? How do you feel? Positive. Okay. All you did was change the narrative. Now, by the way, both narratives could be wrong. I'm not saying that the positive narrative would have worked out if you had done it. It might not have. What I'm saying is, if you adopt the positive narrative, you will end up in a place where you have more internal resources, where your mind is open, where your creativity is stimulated, and you will be much more likely to be able to go on, and to the extent that you do have control, and to the extent that you can affect your outcomes, you'll be much more likely to do that. If you're thinking about taking some kind of risk, and you're taking that risk from a feeling of optimism, and from a feeling of power and confidence and self-control, then if you take the risk that things start to go wrong, and you can keep that sense of confidence and optimism, not unrealistic, confidence not realistic, but really like just kind of a grounded, I'll find a way to get through this, you will be able to step up and hopefully find some solution that helps you get through it. And if not, well, you'll discover what happens when you take a risk and fail. And then, unless it kills you, which it probably won't, you'll get up and do something else. Would anyone like to just share quickly what one of their stories about, this was the victim mentality, and this was the, but in like 1 or 2 sentences, not in a 2-minute version? Anyone willing to share? Yes.
Okay, so I have trouble getting enough participants at events. And so I think the first 2-minute conversation, I was sort of very down, depressed, related to factual information. I think I sort of had a deadpan.
So what was the actual story? What was the victim narrative?
I actually don't remember my words exactly. I think I was just so depressed talking about it.
Oh no. Okay.
People weren't showing up at the workshop.
Okay. Those people, they're not showing up. And what was the owner?
I wish I was even that aggressive about it. I was more depressed.
Those people. Yes. I wasn't actually imitating you. I was giving my reaction. I was joining you in victim solidarity. Going, those darn people, if only they would behave the way we want them to, then my workshop would be full. And what's the owner narrative?
The owner one, I started with, I could have done something. I could have maybe called people to network and brainstorming, which again, I don't know if it worked, but at least it felt better.
There was something I could have done. I could have let someone know I had a workshop with them. That would help. Okay. The third session that I'm doing today is called Being Your Own Business, and that's going to be a completely free-form session, which is just going to be kind of group coaching and brainstorming and stuff. And any of you who are coming to that, I do want to put in a real plug for the concept of marketing. There is a group, I'm not going to name any names, there's a group that is one of my favorite theater groups in the Boston area, and I have watched them over several years move to successively smaller and smaller and smaller venues. And the last two shows they had, I only found out about because a friend of mine is in their cast. And I'm like, they're actually really, really good. And they do good material, they do good original material. And in fact, their posters are awesome. They like, you know, if only they posted them somewhere. They have them in a stack at the show. Well, if you don't go to the, if you don't come about the show, you know, the internet is a wonderful thing, but it's only one way that people find out about stuff. And email, frankly, largely sucks these days because the open rates, you know, people are so deluged. But that's the thing for the third workshop today. But when you shift from the they aren't showing up, and also even notice the way that's phrased, that's passive voice. That's, you know, they aren't doing. When you put it in active voice about you, what you could do, what you might have stopped doing, or how you could interpret it, suddenly it really becomes much more powerful. Now I'm going to share with you one more thing that's a specific technique, and I will demonstrate, but I will not lead you through it just because time-wise I want to leave time for some questions. This is the most powerful thing that I have found. I've been doing some form of self-help and personal growth work. I took my first self-help workshop in 1978, I think. I was very young. Because my father told me if I wanted to live with him, I would have to get fixed. I moved out, did I tell you that? But I did take the self-help workshop, and that gave me the confidence and strength of character to say, okay, I'll move out. But I'm trained in like 44 different self-help techniques or technologies or whatever you want to call them, and this one trumps all of the rest. And I don't know why. I actually have some theories having to do with adult learning theory and brain and blah, 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 blah. Regardless, it's called The Work of Byron Katie. Has anyone here heard of it? Okay, there are a few people who have. This is a way of examining your thoughts. I will tell you what happens after you've examined your thoughts. After you've examined your thoughts stop bugging you as much. I don't know why it works. As I said, I have theories. This is marketed by a woman named Byron Katie. Byron is her first name. I'm sure there's a story there somewhere. And she markets it. Her marketing is very much oriented at the spiritual community, and self-help and become enlightened. I'm not a very woo-woo guy. I'm Harvard MIT, in case I hadn't already pounded that into your heads with a 10-foot pole. I look at this as a very, very effective technique for being able to actually change the way you think. And I'm aware there's some research that has been done on this in terms of its effectiveness, which is not published and is not going to be published because the two researchers are not tenured faculty, and they told me that the results of the research showed that this is so effective that they would be laughed out of academia and it would be threatening to their thesis advisors and so on and so forth. So that was interesting, but in any event, I do have a copy of what they would have published if they decided to publish. And apparently this technique is actually quite effective in a clinical tested setting, blah, blah, blah. What it is you write down your stressful thoughts. Now, I was sneaky when I asked you to do those sentence completions. If you really wrote down what you think in those sentence completions, those are some of your stressful thoughts. So you may have a stressful thought like, I'm not good enough. Or a stressful thought like, they are part of the in crowd. They knew the producer. But you know what at least one or two of your stressful thoughts are because you've already written them down. Any excuse that you have and explanation that you have, if it's a stressful explanation or if it's one that keeps you from doing things, if it's a thought like, well, I could do this, but first I need to X, that's a candidate for this.